again, thank you so much for coming online. We have got a great speaker tonight. In fact, as you just said, Rena, gut health is one of the most important factors in life today. And more, I just come off from a previous call with Catherine Nixon from Sydney, Australia, talking about sleep and also gut health as well. And it's interesting, Ida, that they talk about the same things that we've been doing here in this incredible company called Zenzino with our incredible gut product, the Xenobiotic, and obviously the star of the show, our incredible balanced oil. Anne-Marie, I'd like to introduce you and say thank you so much for coming online for the next 30 minutes to educate the people about some of your knowledge and also wisdom about this arena in the gut field. Anne-Marie is our product development manager here at Zenzino, and for a lady that is like 21, has done so much in her life. She speaks on TV, she speaks on radio, she works at university, she does amazing things. Could you just give the people that are listening now online and also on the Zoom call some background, just a quick 30-second snapshot of your history, and then let's jump into the PowerPoint.
Yeah, sure. So I've been with the company for a little more than 3 years. I started at the factory Fine Pharma in Norway, where I split my time between Sweden and also Norway when we are not under so strict restrictions. I have a background within Master in Human Nutrition and also IOC diploma from the International Olympic of Sports Nutrition. I currently also work with athletes on my free time when I'm not working for Zenzino, and I'm really passionate about both preventive work and also performance. And today I will be speaking about fiber and fiber intake, the health benefits, and why we should really focus on this super important macronutrient as well.
Fantastic, Anne-Marie. Let's get into the PowerPoint and show these guys some of this incredible statistical data that you have. Appreciate your talk.
Great. Okay, so I will start off by sharing my screen. Hopefully you see it.
Yes, perfect.
Great. So today we are talking about gut health, we are talking about fibers, and we are also, of course, discussing Xenobiotic, which is a brilliant food supplement product in our portfolio in Zenzino. I will just start off my presentation today by taking a little bit of a snapshot of the world, the global health, and where we are at. So today, the average American consume less than 50% of the recommended fiber intake. However, the youth, the adolescents, they are even worse. Only around 20% consume what they should. In the UK, if we take an example from the UK, only 9% of the people are reaching their recommended intake of fiber. If we take a look at some data from the Asian Pacific region, we have some numbers from Thailand, and we see here that the average intake, both for men and females, is around 8 grams a day. So if we look at the numbers we have on fiber intake over the world, the global fiber intake, we see that on average basis, around 20 grams a day. In Japan, for example, a little less. In Norway, we eat a lot of sandwiches for lunch and so on. We are a little bit higher than 20 grams a day. However, we should in fact consume between 25 to 35 grams of fiber a day. So we are too low in our fiber intake on a global basis. So this is very illustrative, showing the gap in our fiber intake. Usually when we are speaking about a healthy diet, a healthy lifestyle, we could use some illustrations to talk about this. The food pyramid is an example. So this food pyramid pretty much illustrates how we should build the building blocks in our diet. We should start off with water, tea, coffee, and then of course vegetable, legumes, and fruit and vegetable, creating the foundation in our diet. Then the next level up, we have whole grain products and potatoes, for example, which both of these last two categories are very high in fiber. On top of that, we should have the milk and dairy, fish, eggs, and meat, fats and oils, of course, and then on the very top, processed foods. However, the real food pyramid of 2021 looks like this. We have the ultra processed foods on the bottom, and then next level up, the processed foods, then culinary ingredients, and then at the very top, we have minimally processed foods. And this, ladies and gentlemen, are not the average diet, or the average diet is not balanced. It's not healthy and it's not varied today. However, it's of course attractive, it's convenient, and it is profitable. It's attractive to us because of course these foods are high in sugar, salt, fats, and we crave them. They are attractive to us. Also very convenient in our very busy time schedule in the lives we are living today. And they are also very profitable for the food producers. They are buying cheap ingredients and making huge profit on the foods that they are selling. In fact, 60% of the foods that we are consuming today are ultra processed foods. And ultra processed food, if you base your diet on these types of foods, you will have a poor diet quality. You will have a diet low in essential nutrients. And you will also have foods in your diet that are high in calories. We want to focus on the foods that are on the left-hand side and not at the right-hand side. Those foods we want to minimize or avoid. If we look at a very recent report, the UNC Global Food Research Program published this report just now in April. And this figure here illustrates how many of the calories that we are consuming every day that is from ultra processed foods. And we see here, for example, Japan and Australia, around 40% of all of the foods that we are consuming. And this is too high. Also, if we look at some other figures, numbers from the Asian Pacific region, we see that the calories from fibers from food products is among the lowest in those countries. Why am I talking about processed and ultra processed food and the degree that we are consuming today when my topic was fibers? Well, this is because ultra processed foods are very low typically in fiber. They are also, of course, high in omega-6 fatty acids that we are talking so much about in relation to the ratio between the omega-6 and the 3s, and balanced oil, of course. They are high in sugar, they are high in salt, they are energy dense while nutrient poor, meaning that they provide very little essential nutrients but a lot of calories, and they are also typically high in saturated fats. Okay, what is dietary fibers? Well, I started off by saying it's a macronutrient. It's carbohydrates, but we cannot digest them. The definition is fiber means carbohydrate polymers, which with 3 or more monomeric units which are neither digested nor absorbed in the human small intestine. What we can conclude, okay, it's carbohydrates. They are found in plant foods. They are not digested in the small intestine where we are digesting fats, proteins, and so on. They are fermented or not by bacteria in the large intestine, and they are food for the good or the anti-inflammatory bacteria. Carbohydrates. Just trying to summarize what carbohydrates really are, and I guess that a lot of you know the definition and the differences between the carbohydrates. But what we should start off by saying is that, okay, we have 3 different categories of carbohydrates. We have monosaccharides, simple sugars. We have disaccharides, that are 2 monosaccharides linked together. And then we have polysaccharides. Here, starch is an example, which are linked or is small monosaccharides linked together in bondage. These bonds between the monosaccharides in the starches, they can be broken down by enzymes in the small intestine. However, the 4th category and subcategory of polysaccharides, we find fiber. These are also long links with monosaccharides linked together, but our enzymes in the small intestine cannot break the bondage between them. So they travel down to the large intestine where they are either fermented by the bacteria living there, or they are simply just traveling out. So this category is the key category I am talking about today when I'm talking about fiber and carbohydrates. There are numerous of health benefits with fibers. And here in Europe, we are under strict regulation by the European Food Safety Authority, the EFSA. They have summarized and approved health claims in 4 different categories, in terms of gut health, in terms of digestion, blood sugar, and cholesterol. In terms of gut health and digestion, they are saying and approving health claim linked to increased fecal bulk, normal bowel function, and also the time it takes from we consume food until it's out again, the transit time. And the transit time usually differs between 12 to 24 hours up to 72 hours. Also, when it comes to blood sugar, EFSA is saying that fiber reduces the blood sugar after meals. And when it comes to cholesterol, fibers has cholesterol lowering effect. What types of foods are high in fiber? I guess that many knows this already, but it's of course whole grain food products, breads, and so on, nuts and seeds, legumes, fruits, and vegetables. You would think that if we are to consume more foods and more plant foods, fiber intake usually go up. However, from my work with the athletes, I see that this is not necessarily the case. Here I have just illustrated an example. One of my athletes has one of the day consumed 4,100 calories and the next day 3,100 calories. But we see here that actually on the day where the athletes consume the most calories, it consumes also less fiber. So it's not necessarily linked, the relationship between the calories we consume is not necessarily linked to the amount of fiber we consume. When we are talking about fiber, we have to talk about gut health and microbiota. And this has been a very trendy topic, especially the last couple of years, maybe even 5 years, where we are talking so much more now than when I went to school studying nutrition over 10 years ago. At that time, we learned that our gut was outside of the body, and we didn't need to focus so much on the gut, besides the digestion part and how we are digesting our macronutrients and micronutrients. Today, the picture is a little bit different from then at that time. Today, we are learning more and more that we have a balance in our gut between good and bad bacteria. And we want to feed our gut the appropriate nutrition. So we are born with a microbiota. It develops over time. We do not want to replace our intestinal flora, but we can influence it. It can be a team player and not an opponent. And it can also change through a life cycle. It's extremely individual, so we cannot necessarily say that one person has a better microbiota, intestinal flora than another, but we have to make sure that we are providing the nutrients, fibers, to our good bacteria. Because fiber is in fact food for the good bacteria. If we do not feed them, they will end up starving and eventually being pushed out by the bad bacteria. Also, we know that 70 to 80% of all of the immune cells are found in the colon. So this link between immune system and gut is extremely strong. There are numerous of factors that influence our gut health, not necessarily fiber alone, but fiber and the intake, our diet, is the most important influential factor we can do something about. Because yes, the way we are born and the diet early in life are very much linked to our gut microbiota, but we cannot do anything about that. Usually also we cannot really do anything about our medicines, or if we have to take antibiotics. We can do something about our stress level, but maybe not so much from day to day. And also, of course, how much processed foods we are consuming. All of these factors I mentioned now, they are pro-inflammatory factors, influencing our gut, our epithelial wall in a more inflammatory way. What we want to focus on, what is beneficial anti-inflammatory for us, is the amount of fiber we consume, the type of fiber we consume, how much plant food we are consuming, and also if we are to include some fermented foods in our diet. All of these 4 factors are important, and I've highlighted those, and I have one word for you. The key to our fiber intake is diversity, meaning that we should focus not only on the total amount of fibers we are consuming, we should also focus on how many different plant foods, how many different types of fiber we are consuming every day. We see here in the Western world that this diet that we are consuming, it's a diet that is linked to dysbiosis, unbalanced gut microbiota. Dysbiosis increases the risk of chronic inflammation and metabolic dysfunction. And dysbiosis is actually an unbalanced relationship between the good and the bad bacteria in our colon. They will also always be in battle with each other. If we are not feeding the good bacteria, the bad bacteria will push them out, and so on. So we have to make sure that we are promoting a good environment for the bacteria. If we aren't doing that, we could end up with outcomes like altered intestinal balance. We could have inflammatory cells infiltrating the mucosal layer, also production of pro-inflammatory cytokines, and epithelial damage. All factors influencing chronic inflammation and the severity of the symptoms we are experiencing. Also, I can mention that LPS is on at the wall of the bad bacteria, and a lot of studies is focusing on LPS. I will not go into details now, but what we know is that having a dysbiosis over time increases the risk of several diseases: inflammatory bowel disease, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, mental disorders, and also, of course, obesity. And there are some very interesting studies that have just been published in terms of obesity, where we, for example, see that if we replace the microbiota in an obese person with a normal weight, we have very many interesting and health-promoting outcomes. So make sure that we focus on our gut health. Dietary fiber, I said, was very important for bacterial fermentation. And we have different bacteria types fermenting different types of fibers. What we want is eventually production of short-chain fatty acids. And these 3 short-chain fatty acids are the most important ones. We have acetate, propionate, and of course, bitrate. And bitrate here we see is a byproduct, or the end product after fermentation by Firmicutes from, for example, resistant starch. And they are primary energy source for our cells in the gut. And also they are linked to maintaining intestinal balance and through different kinds of anti-inflammatory actions. So please remember that dietary fibers, food for the good bacteria are fermenting the fibers, and we eventually end up with producing short-chain fatty acids, and especially bitrates, which are linked to positive health outcomes in our colon. Also, there are some very interesting studies recently that have shown that people with inflammatory bowel disease, they have reduced bacteria producing these short-chain fatty acids. Also, they have a reduced content of short-chain fatty acids in fecal samples. When it comes to obesity, studies also have shown that having a low fiber intake increases the risk of metabolic syndrome, which are again linked to very many other lifestyle diseases, type 2 diabetes and so on. And also that obese individuals have lower bacterial, they have a very more homogeneous bacteria mass compared to normal weight. What we want is a rich intestinal microflora, so this is clearly not a good sign. The second category that is very important in terms of fibers, now I've talked about gut health, the second category is blood sugar. Because when we are consuming food, when we are eating, we have a rise in our blood sugar levels. Then we have to produce insulin, of course, transporting the glucose into the cells. And what we want is not to have as high peaks in our blood sugar, but a steady blood sugar rise and a steady decline. And if we are to consume fibers with our meals, the blood sugar spike will be lower, and also the total blood sugar volume, the volume under the curve, or the area under the curve for scientists, will be lower. This is beneficial not because we don't need to produce as much insulin and in terms of the risk of type 2 diabetes over time. Also, it's very much linked to our appetite regulation and not craving too much between meals. And if we are to consume meals on a regular basis that are well put together, this will also be very influential positively for our weight and weight management over time. The third category is linked to cholesterol. And this is a very simple drawing done by myself. Sorry for the simplicity in the drawing, but I tried here to illustrate that when we are consuming food, we are also consuming usually some cholesterol. And if we are to consume fiber at the same time when we are eating, both fibers and cholesterol will travel down to the stomach. Here it travels down to the small intestine after some time, and it mixes with cholesterol from the liver. If soluble fibers are present, they will form a gel around the cholesterol and bind the cholesterol. And also this cholesterol then will travel out of our body through feces. Meaning that if fibers are present, we will have less cholesterol traveling back to the circulation, which is beneficial because of a blood cholesterol lowering effect, and also, of course, the risk of having elevated cholesterol levels over time. So key in fiber focus is that we should focus on diversity and plant foods every day. Because our good bacteria, they are not present if we are not feeding them. They are very much dependent on everyday feeding. And if we are to increase our intake, we could do that in two ways. We could either increase the amount of plant foods. And remember, if we are to increase our intake of plant foods, we will also increase our intake of calories. Or we could increase our intake through supplements. The old Cinebiotic, we just launched Cinebiotic Plus, but the old Cinebiotic, I will start with that. This is a very unique product because we actually focus on having 5 fiber types from the very beginning in our fiber product. We recommended 1 scoop a day. 1 scoop was 6 grams. And we said that we should mix it with water, take it in the morning or in to lunch or in connection to dinner, for example. But From the very beginning, Zinzino focused on diversity. 5 different sources to fibers: resistant starch, beta-glucans, inulin, fructooligosaccharides, and also psyllium husk. Today, we have launched Synabiotic Plus, including 3 more sources to fibers. We now say that the recommended intake is 2 scoops a day. We have managed not to use any traditional excipients, and then following the trend and the pathway we started on with all natural. It's free from gluten and also the same neutral and slightly sweet taste as the previous Synabiotic. We included the 3 more fiber sources from resistant starch from potatoes, from green bananas, and also guar gum from Indian guar beans. So as you see, this product ensures diversity. This is a slide that I am a little bit proud of because it pretty much illustrates the health benefits with our product. Soluble fibers, they have a high swelling capacity and water binding ability, and they are also substrates for fermentation in our colon, bacterial fermentation. There are 2 categories. The first categories are the viscous fibers. Beta-glucans, psyllium husk, and guar gum can be examples here. They are relatively non-fermentable, but they are forming this gel that I was talking about, and hence also influencing blood cholesterol and glucose. The second category that we have is the non-viscous fibers. And here, inulin, fructooligosaccharides, and resistant starches are examples. They are being fermented by bacteria, and they are linked to production of these short-chain fatty acids. In Synabiotic Plus, we have focused on having gut health as our key message, meaning that the proportion of the non-viscous fibers is higher than the viscous fiber. So yes, Synabiotic is of course very, very important for blood cholesterol and glucose, but the key message with Synabiotic to us is gut health and ensuring a good balance between the good and the bad bacteria in our gut and promoting production of these short-chain fatty acids. I have a couple of examples. If we were to consume 1 gram of beta-glucan, we would need to consume, for example, 130 grams of lentils or 200 grams of peas. Oats and barley are good sources, but besides those sources to beta-glucan, the sources in our diet is quite limited. Synabiotic Plus provides 1 gram of beta-glucans a day. And once again, this influences blood cholesterol and glucose. Another example is resistant starch. If we were to have 5 grams of resistant starch in our diet, we would need to consume 50 grams of raw oats or 100 grams of cooled potatoes. Because once potatoes are hot, they are containing not resistant starch, but starch that we can break in the small intestine, or the intestine can break the bondage and we can digest it. So they need to be cool in order for the resistant starch to be present. However, we are usually not consuming 100 grams of cooled potatoes a day, so the sources in our diet to resistant starch is quite limited.
Ida?
Yes?
I'm just having some audio with your microphone.
Okay. Still? Still issues?
Rena, are you having the same issue?
Yes, Rob.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So you're clear. So it might be just your headpiece or where it's connected to.
Just
There we go. Beautiful.
you hear me now?
Beautiful. Thank you.
Oh.
Sorry. It's too good of information not to hear it clear.
Yeah, of course, I understand.
Thank you. Back, sorry.
Okay, so what is really interested here is that if we look at people with IBS, which are around 20 to 25 of the population today, they usually tolerate resistant starch better. And they are to limit the amount of very complex carbohydrates in their diet because they are not tolerating these foods so good. But resistant starch seem to be tolerated better. In Cinebiotic Plus, we have, or 2 scoops will provide around 5 grams of resistant starch a day, which is very unique. And if you are looking for a resistant starch product out there, my guess is that you won't really find anyone who is as good and as diverse as Cinebiotic. I just have a couple of examples from studies in terms of resistant starch. First, resistant starch. So one recent study saw that resistant starch from potato increased short-chain fatty acids in fecal samples. A direct link here. And the next one up is a meta-analysis published in The Lancet. They looked at studies including over 4,600 individuals, and they saw that the highest fiber consumers compared to the lowest had a 15 to 30% decrease in all-cause mortality and cardiovascular disease mortality, coronary heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, and colorectal cancer. The greatest risk reduction was over 25 to 29 grams a day. So make sure that you consume more than what you are consuming most likely today. 2 scoops of Cinebiotic Plus will provide the gap that we are missing in our fiber intake on a global basis, providing the extra fibers up to 30 or 35 grams a day recommended worldwide. So Cinebiotic Plus from an insufficient intake to a sufficient intake. Cinebiotic Plus is part of our health protocol. We have today talked about the broad spectrum of fibers that we have, the 8 sources to fibers, but also, of course, the health protocol contains so much more. Omega-3 fatty acids, the polyphenols, omega-9s from the olive oil in balance oil. We have the Extend and Extend Plus providing so many essential micronutrients, fat-soluble vitamins, water-soluble vitamins, minerals, plant extracts, beta-glucans. That is totally another chapter. The health protocol promotes a balanced omega-6-3 ratio. It promotes a balanced gut microbiota that we have been talking about today, and it's promoting a balanced micronutrient intake. And here in Norway, Scandinavia, we only use 2% of our medical expenses on prevention, and we use 50% on treatment. So it's up to the individual to invest in their own health. I hope I today have talked about fiber in a way that you understood. Also made pretty clear that we are consuming too little fiber on a global basis. This is extremely important that we address and do something about. And hopefully I have inspired you to take Cinebiotic every day.
Fantastic, Anne-Marie. Thank you so much. Absolutely outstanding presentation. And as a lot of people have been saying and messaging me, can we get a set of those slides? So if they are open for public domain, I'd love to get a set in PDF format just so people can actually just go through as they rewatch the program, okay, and educate themselves further about this incredible product, Xenobiotics. One question that does come up a lot, the probiotics, prebiotics. There's a massive debate or uneducation about it, why we need pre before the pro. Could you just spend a couple of minutes on that as we close out?
Absolutely. So in order to have our bacteria, the good bacteria in the colon to live, we need to feed them with prebiotics. Of course, if we are only to provide probiotics, fermented foods, bacteria to the colon, and not feeding them with prebiotic, they will end up starving and being pushed out by the bad bacteria. So we have to make sure that we are focusing much on the prebiotics, because they are the food, they are the essential nutrients that are making sure that we have the balance that we want in the gut.
Outstanding, fantastic. And guys, just to repeat that again, don't forget, make sure you get your balance test. This is the cornerstone or the first step in the process. Then make sure you get the health protocol regime, which is your balanced oil. That oil is just, it's just a must. Couple that then, and in the order that I'm saying, coupled with the Xenobiotic, again, get your daily fibers, and then the Extend Plus is the next regime to have. Those products, those 3 products make up that health protocol. If you've got access to them in your country, okay, here in Asia Pacific, they're fully available in Hong Kong for countries around the world. If you've got the access to the health protocol, please get it. The Australian market will start seeing this regime or this health protocol program from about July onwards this year. So our Therapeutic Goods Administration, the TGA here in Australia, is starting to give us the approval or listing numbers that we need for registration of our products here in the Australian marketplace. So Ida Marie, you've done an incredible job as you've been working with the product development area, and as I say, you've brought our products to the next level with this all-natural approach. I mean, only a handful of companies, if you look at the label, guys, and you see these labels and what's on the label, this is all because Ida Marie has spent countless hours getting this product done. So it is an all-natural, vegan-friendly, vegan society-friendly, all these things. You just push the limits to make sure that we give and deliver products that synergistically work together. So all of our products, guys, and understand that, from the balanced oil all the way through to the Xenobiotic, all the way through to the next generation, which is the Extend Plus, all these products synergistically work together. In other words, in the system, they're working together. You're not throwing the dice up and saying, okay, should I take this? Should I take that? You bring our products together, add Zenzino, and they're guaranteed to work synergistically together. Ida Marie, any closing comments from your side as we close out from another great presentation from you?
Yeah, I would like to mention that actually we are the pioneers within all natural and natural food supplements. We have gotten a 2-year grant from the Norwegian Research Fund because no other companies out there are as invested and knowledgeable within this field as Zenzino. So we could really, really be proud of our products and also say that we are the front runners within our industry.
Outstanding. Fantastic, Ida Marie. Thank you so much again. And guys, don't forget, next week, Dr. Colin Robertson is on. This gentleman's on our medical or scientific advisory board. He works directly with Ida Marie as well. And some of the scientific information that he will be sharing with you next Tuesday is just mind-blowing. Ida Marie, thank you again. Look forward to seeing you again in about 3 months' time, when we'd love to invite you on and have you share the knowledge as we grow this incredible consumer base around the world.
Thank you very much for having me, Robert.
Thank you, guys. Take care. See you soon. Bye, guys.